Hello, welcome to History's Mystery. Today we'll be discussing the Government of India Act through a question. This type of questions are now being asked in the UPSC examination. The Act of 1935 reflected the desire of the government to compete with the Congress for the allegiance of the dominant peasant communities. So this apparently looks like a very weird question. Weird in the sense, you would think how you could correlate the dominant peasant communities with the Act of 1935. But this would be clear once we go through the features of the Act. So look at the tail word, it's critically analyze. So we have to go through the features and then we have to go through the limitations as well. Then we can come to a conclusion that yes, the government of India did try to rally behind the peasants for their allegiance, or we can also counter the acts because it's critically analyzed. We can also counter the statement. So let's look at the features now. We have seen that in the 1919 Montagu Chelmsford reforms, diarchy was introduced at the provinces. Diarchy means a separate list. One would be under the British governor, the other would be under the Indian ministers. So there was a tourist reserve list. Under the reserve list, all the important functionaries, all the important functions and provisions were kept reserved for the British. The less important matters like those of agriculture and all were kept in the unreserved list, on the provincial list. So in the Government of India Act 1935, we see that diarchy that was earlier introduced through the Montagu Chelmsford reform was replaced with responsible self-government. That means we would see the implementation of this particular provision through the elections of 1937, where Congress would win a majority of majority in 7 out of 11 provinces and form government there. So this was the first feature. The second feature is related to the government at the center. So though diarchy was abolished at the provinces, diarchy was introduced at the center. Along with the introduction of diarchy, we see a new provision of a federal structure, that the India from now on would become a federation of states. But this provision was contingent upon the fact that half of the members of the princely states had to agree to this provision. So this provision was not implemented, and this remained as a paper federation, I would see. The third feature of the act is the fiscal autonomy. Fiscal autonomy in the sense the taxes, the right to levy, collect taxes. This was earlier the prerogative of the Secretary of State. Now this financial control was transferred from the Secretary of State sitting at London to the Viceroy sitting at New Delhi. So we could see the fiscal autonomy, the right to levy and collect tax, now was at the hands of the Viceroy. The fourth, and this is the particular provision that is the answer to our act, that if we analyze this particular provision correctly, we'll reach the conclusion. We'll reach a conclusion. The provision is the expansion of the electorate. We would see, if we adopt an uncritical approach, we would see that the government of India has expanded the electorate to 30 million people in India. But let's wait for the limitations of the act to see whether this was a substantial reform or there were some other motives behind it. So though the electorates were expanded to 30 million, but whether the electorate covered a substantial percentage of the population or not, let's wait and watch. The fifth is the expansion of the women's franchise. Women's franchise were also expanded, and certain seats were also reserved for women. These are the very important features. And now let's look at the limitations of the Government of India Act. So let's look at the limitations. Number one is the discretionary powers given to the provincial governors. Although there is an elected government there, a majority elected majority government at the provinces, but the discretionary power granted to the provincial governors would nullify any reforms from the provincial elected majority government. For example, the governor had the right to call the legislature. The governor had the right to not give assent or consent to any act passed by the legislature. And the most draconian of all the discretionary power was the governor's prerogative to dismiss an elected majority government on the grounds of public order. So this exists till date in the form of the right of the governor to dismiss an elected state government in the post-independent India on grounds of failure of constitutional machinery. So the genesis was there in the Government of India Act itself. Secondly, princely states could nominate 30 to 40% of the members in the bicameral legislature. So you just imagine that if the princely states get the right to nominate 30 to 40%, obviously the nominated members would be someone who would be a loyalist, someone who would remain loyal to the princely states and in turn loyal to the British government, because the princely states were aware that the incursion of the freedom movement into the princely states would result in dismantling of the status quo. Now they would have to accept the democratic principles. So this is in a way a provision to nullify the majority of the Congress at the center through a backdoor in the sense that giving the right to nominate 30 to 40% of the members, 30 to 40% of the members, which prevent Congress from bringing about drastic reforms through various acts and bills. Number three, and this is the answer. Herein lies our answer. Only rich and middle peasants were enfranchised to win away their loyalty from Congress. So if you substantiate this point, it would be like rich and middle peasants had always been the base, Congress support base. यही peasant रहे जिनका support the Congress could grow as a pan-Indian organization. So this certainly was an attempt on the side of the British to win away their loyalty from the side of the Congress to the British government through enfranchising them. As we have seen, पहले आपने देखा कि 30 million Indians were enfranchised, but this was really 10% of the total population of India. So a minuscule amount of the fraction of the population was enfranchised, and that to a very selected segment of the population, owing to the fact that this particular segment of the population forms the support base of the Indian National Congress. The fourth provision is something very strange about the act. It was the absence of dominion status. The act didn't mention that it's conferring dominion status to India. However, we should also appreciate the fact that in the Lahore session, the Congress had already passed the resolution of Purna Swaraj, or complete independence. So even the dominion status, I don't think it would have benefited much had it been included. And the fifth is the act failed to satisfy neither the princely states nor the Muslim League. Obviously, the Congress was utterly dissatisfied with the act, but the other factions like the Muslim League and princely states are also dissatisfied with the act. The Muslim League was fearful of a very strong center that would at the end of the day would result in the dominance of Hindu majority Congress. On the other hand, the princely states were quite happy to maintain the status quo, and were not ready to accept an act whose future was act with a clause of federation whose future was very uncertain and undefined. So we can conclude in multiple ways. I have given a conclusion here in a quite different way, but we can conclude that the Act of 1935 was certainly an attempt by the government to win away the loyalty of the rich and middle peasants, the traditional support base of the Congress. You can also, however, its the importance of the Government of India Act cannot be nullified merely based on this provision. though it has been criticized by statements like the Government of India Act was all brakes and no engines. However, the Constitution of India, once we gained independence, the Constitution of India that we ended up adopting took more than 250 of its clause straight out of it, ruling out its insignificance. With this, we come to an end. Thank you.